We're trying to solve a problem here.
Tomorrow's going to be very exciting.
We are so excited about the future.
I will build your roads.
We don't need roads.
Hello, and welcome to Solving for Tomorrow, Tales from the Tech Frontier, the show about tackling the biggest problems in the universe with technology. I'm your host, Brian Geisel, CEO of Geisel Software. Today, I'm here with Russ Start, founder of LiveKit. Russ is an engineer and entrepreneur who played key roles in building apps like, Twitter, 23andMe, and Medium. He was also in the fifth batch of Y Combinator. We're going to jump into that in a second. Back in 2007, early YC stuff. Russ, welcome to the show. So glad to have you.
Hey, Brian, thanks so much. It's great to be here.
One of the things I love to do is dive into the early stuff, like what got you here. I'd love to hear what sparked it for you and all that stuff. We just talked about the Y Combinator stuff. What was that situation? I heard somewhere that you got rejected by YC first. What's going on with that?
Yeah, I got rejected.
How dare they? How dare they?
Right, I know. I think about that sometimes. YC. It was an interesting story. I was in college at UC Davis doing my bachelor's degree in computer science back in 2005, 2006 timeframe, and I had a friend who had dropped out, just a brilliant programmer, and took a job at a company on Pioneer Way in Mountain View. And Y Combinator started off in Boston or in Cambridge more specifically, and opened an office on Pioneer Way in Mountain View, just a few buildings down the road from my friend. And he walked in there one day and said, "Hey, me and my buddy Russ want to be part of YC. How do we become part of this? We want to start a company, and we've been following Paul Graham for a while. We both read Hackers and Painters, his book, and they invited us to a dinner back then. I think it was the second batch that was going at that time, and so we went for a dinner there, and they encouraged us to apply, and so we started to put our heads together, think about like a location-based social network. I think it was called Dodgeball at the time. That was kind of this SMS-based mobile social network that eventually, I guess the next version of it became Foursquare. But we applied with something kind of similar to Dodgeball, but that was an actual app that ran on these Nokia devices before the smartphone. And we sent that application in, and we got this response back from Paul, and it said, well, there's a company that I've already funded called Looped, and I don't really see how y'all are any different from them. What are you going to provide that's different? And so we wrote this long email kind of saying what was different about it, and it was targeting a different audience and a different kind of use case for people. And then I still have the email. Yeah, Paul responded back I don't think you can beat Sam, meaning Sam Altman. We got rejected. Turns out, in the end, I guess Paul was right. But we applied again. I think for the next batch or a batch later in between. I think the fifth batch. The third was when we first got rejected, I believe, and then the fifth batch we applied again and ended up getting in.
Oh, that's awesome. And was that in as LiveKit, or was that another company?
No, that was another company, but kind of crazy enough. That company was at a time when Apple was still building these white kind of plastic MacBook laptops, and they had started to put webcams into those laptops. It was the first time that they had an embedded webcam in a laptop, and we looked at that webcam and we were like, oh wow, now you could actually connect with any person on earth using, just your laptop camera. And so I don't really like to frame it as we built Chat Roulette 3 years before Chat Roulette, but we were trying to effectively build a platform that allowed you to conference with anybody in the world with just in your browser by putting URL in. I was doing a co-op at the time when I applied to YC at Cisco, and Cisco had just bought WebEx, and so I had used WebEx and I thought it wasn't very good and it was kind of clunky and it was this standalone application you had to install on your computer. And so I thought it'd be pretty cool to be able to just video conference with anybody with just a URL and a browser. And so that was our company that we did at YC. It was called Meet You. And it's just funny because that was 2007. It's, I don't know, like can't do math right now, but 17 years ago or something like that. And, and now like LiveKit is building effectively infrastructure that would have made something like Meet You easier to build or possible at the time. And so kind of full circle back to some of the same ideas or same technologies that I was already tinkering with in 2007.
Yeah, that's really what ended up happening with that company.
Oh boy. Uh, it's a funny story. That company, kind of a weird story, I guess. One of the things that we were kind of struggling with when we were working on Meet You was like, how do we get people to use something that's just like a, general purpose meeting thing in a web browser? It's kind of a new behavior for people as well to connect over video on the internet at that time. And so we decided to go after a vertical. So the vertical we went after was speed dating over live video in a browser. And my co-founder at the time said, "You know what? I just like don't really understand dating, period, and I don't really want to work on a dating website." And so right after demo day, we had a few different term sheets from investors, and then he decided to just leave because he didn't want to work on it, and it's totally fair. It wasn't something he was passionate about, and neither was I actually in the end, I discovered. But yeah, investors pulled their term sheets, and I ended up just folding the company after 6 months and joined some friends who I'd met in the batch and worked on a different company.
Okay, so here's what I think's interesting about this, and what I want to know from you is like,
Yeah.
now you've built this amazing company, LiveKit, that's doing some really fascinating stuff that we're about to get into. But, and I'll put this in air quotes, but how do you think about failure? Because you had these two companies before it, but here you are building now this amazing company that's just killing it. How do you think about that and about that process you went through?
Yeah, it's interesting because this is my fifth company that
Okay.
I've tried to start or worked on, and so I've had a bunch of false starts. And I think one thing that has been kind of consistent across these companies, or that has kind of been the trend line across these companies, is that they have gotten better and better over time. I think one, I've learned more as well,
Sure.
but I think in failure there is learning. That's kind of a thing that a lot of people say, but it is true. You learn more in failure than you do in success. And so I think that that's one kind of takeaway or big thing that has kind of led to LiveKit being kind of the best out of the bunch so far. So what I was saying was that, I think what people say that there is learning in failure, it's absolutely true. I've learned so much from each of the companies that I've started and that have failed. I think another thing that is kind of unique to the Silicon Valley kind of entrepreneurial ethos, I guess, is that failure is part of the process. Failure is okay. You can. I've had younger founders come to me before and say, "Oh, well, what if I raise this money and it doesn't work out?" Or they have a fear of that, or really trying to optimize for like a soft landing or an acqui-hire or something like that if it's just not working. And what I tell them is that it's already baked into the statistics that your startup probably won't work, right? But I think everyone accepts that that's the case, like, and that's okay. It's okay to try and then fail and then try again. I think that the thing around persistence is critically important. It's that you just keep going and you keep taking swings. And you take swings with a bit more information and a bit more understanding. You make a bit better decisions every time you do it. And I don't know where LiveKit will ultimately go, but it's been going better than anything in the past, and I'm encouraged by that. And so, trajectory wise, that's kind of the thing that I pay attention to, versus any one kind of failure I've had in the past.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so awesome. And I think I always love encouraging people, like, you just keep going at it, right? And you just learning as you go. And I love these success stories of, like, look, we went through the muck, and people don't see that picture of the muck that we go through building these companies. And then they see, like, oh, you just appeared out of nowhere, Russ, with this successful LiveKit company.
It's what they talk about, those quote overnight successes, or whatever, right? And it's one of those things. I remember when I was young, and would tell people, hey, I'm starting a company, right? Even my YC company that I had in 2007, people just immediately think, oh, okay, this person's an ex Zuckerberg. It's like, uh, in the news, we kind of glorify the very, very few, ones that turn into these massive successes. And then everyone kind of, who's on the outside of the industry, assumes, oh, okay, that person's starting this thing, they're going to become the next Zuckerberg one day. And I'm like, well, it's a lot harder than that. The game is very, it's crowded, it's different. There's a lot of, pitfalls and things that can go wrong. As it just doesn't look like kind of this strange lens that the mass media puts on these things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think about the dating app that you're putting together. Had you hit around the COVID time, you might have been Zoom instead, right? Sometimes it's that timing thing and just what the need is at the moment.
And this is the other, I think, big learning from these failures is, that I've had in the past. It's it's that it's interesting. There have been some of these ideas along the way that I've had, kind of, um, even working on a dating app, right? Like, this was not the first dating app I ever worked on. I actually worked on a second one later after I left Twitter. And I kind of described it as like Tinder before Tinder. And there are a variety of reasons that it didn't work out. And, but not so dissimilar from the reason my other co-founder dropped out for the first one. I guess I'm not learning that much, but, there are these ideas that I thought could be big, and then I didn't actually execute fully on some of those ideas, and then someone else did, and they ended up doing well. But one thing that I tell myself, I tell other people too, is, I couldn't actually change any part of the journey so far and expect to be here where LiveKit is doing well. Like, you see, but I think Butterfly Effect is the movie or something like that. Like, you cannot change even one part about that journey. So you just have to appreciate everything that has happened. It's all happened. When people say things happen for a reason, in another way, they're really saying, like, you can't modify any one piece of this entire, any decision you've made and expect to be exactly here right now and very grateful for the moment that you're in.
Yeah, man, that couldn't be more true. That's yes, exactly. And it's interesting at Geisel Software, we've had a very different, but yet similar in a lot of ways. So I started in 2011.
Okay.
And so we just ate crap for 7 years. And just, right? Like,
I know the feeling.
All right. Just through the muck, like, come on, this has to work better eventually. And then all of a sudden we hit our stride, and all those lessons that I picked up in that 7 years, we're able to roll and start cruising. And I shouldn't say cruising, because it's never a cruise. It's more work, but it's now all of a sudden you see the positive direction.
Totally.
And right, you were making positive direction in what everyone else, that's why I put air quotes, like what everyone else is calling failures. They were just positive direction. I think that's harder to see,
Trajectory and rate of change and the direction of change, that's the most important thing. Not any outcome or where you started or, like, specific points along the way. It's really kind of, it's those things. So yeah.
So true. So okay, so then what brought you into LiveKit? Like, what made you go, this is the area? Or is this where you started, and then what did you pivot to? Or you pivoted to this? How did that work for you?
LiveKit is the first company that I have actually started for the reasons that I kind of originally wanted to start companies in general. My dad has been in startups and technology since I was a kid, like 80s, 90s, across many different kind of you know um, moments or technological shifts. So, like in the semiconductor industry with the PC, and then GPUs, and then I think it was DSL and high speed internet, and then there was like flash storage, and like so. I've seen him just go through all of these different waves of improvements to the technology stack, or progressions of technology. And when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, I just wanted to kind of be like him. He's one of my heroes. He's one of my best friends, and I just wanted to start companies because it's this exciting thing. And I go to the office sometimes, and I feel everybody's excitement being there and working on something and changing the world with just a small group of people. And so I wanted that. I wanted to like have that feeling too in my career. And I kind of, in a way, maybe missed the memo on why companies even exist in the first place. It's like there's a change that you want to see happen in the world, or a movement, or something you believe in, and over time you kind of find other people that believe in the same thing, and you form a group and you go after it together, and you accelerate your progress towards that change you want to see in the world, or improvement you want to see in the world. And all my previous companies before LiveKit, I was really starting companies to start companies. Maybe to like be an entrepreneur, or to try to be famous, or to try to be rich and sell it to somebody or whatever. But this is the first time where LiveKit, in a way, came about by accident. It started off as an open source project. It wasn't meant to be a company. My co-founder and I, David, we were both in that 2007 Y Combinator batch. We were working on different companies.
Different companies?
Yeah,
Okay.
different companies, but we met back then, and we'd stayed friends over the last 17 years. We started a company together before LiveKit, and we had sold that company to Medium. And so we were at Medium, and just really, the pandemic had hit at that time, and everybody was kind of rushing to build applications that allowed you to connect with other people over the internet, because we couldn't connect with other people in the physical world for a bit of time, right? Until the vaccines really came out. And so we started to work on LiveKit as infrastructure that would make it easier for people to build applications that let you connect over the internet, using your camera and your microphone. You have these two magical sensors. A camera can capture photons of light in the air, right? And turn it into ones and zeros. And you can take vibrations in the air and turn those into ones and zeros. That's the microphone. And you can take that binary data, send it over wires, right? Physical wires somewhere in the earth, right? Buried in the earth or underwater, anywhere else in the world in 200 milliseconds, reconstitute that information and play it back to someone, and they can see it and kind of be where you are, or see you where you are. That's teleportation technology, probably the closest we'll get to it. And maybe in my lifetime anyway. And like, developers wanted to be able to build applications that leveraged it during that time of the pandemic. And there was not good infrastructure in open source that they could use. It just wasn't there. And so we started to work on this project in a way to give back, because we were now kind of 20 years into our careers as software engineers, and we had leveraged open source for the things that we had built, either at companies we had worked for or companies we had started. We'd stood on the shoulders of the people who had been giving back to humanity by putting all this free software out there that can be leveraged by a developer. And so in a way, it was like our turn to kind of, to give back as well. And so that's ultimately why we started to work on LiveKit, the open source project. The company kind of came about because when we launched open source 3 years ago, it's funny because we just crossed 10,000 GitHub stars today, so
Congrats.
good timing for telling this story. But
There
we
you go.
just thank you. Yeah, we just launched open source 3 years ago, and it just took off almost immediately. I think within like 3 or 4 weeks, there's this company that was taking it and deploying it in 911 dispatch centers all around the country within the first 3 weeks of us putting open source out there. And
Wow,
we
the
were just
market's talking to you.
we were just so excited about what people were doing. I mean, even larger companies started to kick the tires with it. Spotify and Reddit and X, formerly Twitter. At that time, it was Twitter, and these larger companies too were starting to deploy it internally and build things with it. And we were so excited about that we said, well, okay, how do we continue working on this for the next 10 years, right? How do we make this sustainable? And it was one, that plus having conversations with some of these larger companies where they were saying, hey, we don't want to deploy and scale this. We would rather just pay you to deploy and scale it for us. That, the light bulb went off. We said, okay, hey, we could actually start a company that built this software out for other companies that want to pay for us to run this service for them. And that's kind of how LiveKit, the company, was born, but kind of completely organically, right? From an interest in infrastructure for audio and video to an open source project, and then eventually to a company to kind of try to make it sustainable and something that we can work on for the next decade.
There's something I wish I could explain about how when people create something with a passion, it's just different.
It's different. It is
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. So, okay. So can you describe what is LiveKit? What is, somebody listening who has no idea what the company is we're talking about. What is it? What do you guys do?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that I can explain what it is. And it's also kind of evolved a bit too over time, just because of the variety of use cases for it, which I'm sure we'll talk about a bit. But I think for the layperson or someone who's not super familiar with the infrastructure, the easiest way to explain it, or maybe most tractable way of explaining it, is all of the technology that underpins Zoom. We've all used Zoom, right? And Zoom is like this magical application, lets you connect with anybody, anywhere, instantly, as if you're kind of next to them, so to speak. And there's a ton of technology underneath that application. The application itself, I won't say anything about it, but the technology underneath, like the reason why everyone uses Zoom is because Zoom always works. And there's a ton of engineering effort that goes into making it that way, that it always works. And to build that reputation that Zoom has, we take all of the technology underneath the application effectively, and we've built a version of it that is open source and that any developer can use and leverage and embed within their application. So if you think of Zoom having this magical, proprietary, private technology that is only used to power the Zoom app today, we've built a version of that from scratch ourselves that is available as an API that any developer can use. It's out there in open source. Any developer can take it, can learn from it, can deploy it, can build an application that uses it. That's what LiveKit ultimately is.
Okay, awesome. That's awesome. And then we can probably dive into some of the use cases that are happening today, which are pretty cool. Mm-hmm. I think the big one that most people are going to be most familiar with is probably the ChatGPT stuff, right?
Definitely. But at this point, yeah.
So yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. Like what is the part that you guys have brought to ChatGPT, and what are some of the kind of features that have come out of that? And let's talk through that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So ChatGPT, the way that most people have interacted with it in the past, maybe a year ago, a lot of people have talked to ChatGPT now with their voice, and that's kind of the part that we power, and I'll get to that. But maybe a year ago, most people's experience with ChatGPT has been to text with it, right? It looks kind of like a messaging app, and you type out some message to it, in the form of a prompt, I think is the term that they use. And then ChatGPT responds to you in a very human-like sounding way via text. And there's a whole.
And I think if
Go
people
ahead.
don't know what, if you're listening, you don't know what ChatGPT is, like, welcome back, Steve Rogers from 1940. Thank you for saving America. And here we are. Check out ChatGPT and it'll make more sense.
Yeah, amazing application. And so there's a kind of a story behind how the whole thing came together, but ChatGPT, when the app first came out, it was powered by GPT-3. And even back then, so I think it was like November, maybe December of 2022, when you sent these prompts to ChatGPT, texted with it, it responded like it was a human being. And then something that I ended up doing a few months later, maybe like 2 or 3 months later, so right at the start of 2023, was I said, well, if you take LiveKit, one thing that we had built at that time that nobody else had was, and this is getting a little bit into the technicals of how LiveKit works, but LiveKit is built upon a protocol called WebRTC, Web Real-Time Communication. If you've ever used Google Meet or Zoom or Discord or any of those applications, those use WebRTC as well. It's like the kind of de facto way that you can connect to people over a network. It's the wire protocol, information going over the internet. It's the wire protocol for how to connect any two or more people together in real time. And so LiveKit's built upon that protocol. And what I thought was, okay, wow, like I'm texting with ChatGPT. This feels very human. How can I talk to ChatGPT? What if I hook up kind of the ChatGPT brain, the GPT-3 model, to LiveKit's technology stack for being able to, connect anybody over a network in less than 100 milliseconds of latency? If I merge those two things together, what would it feel like to actually talk to ChatGPT and have it talk back to me? And so I built this demo and called Kit, kind of a Knight Rider reference, but also LiveKit. And it's funny because I went on Cameo and I found out that David Hasselhoff has a Cameo, and he'll like actually do, I think it was like $180 or something, and he'll do like a message. And part of me was like, oh man, I'm gonna get the Hoff on here and I'm gonna have him talk to AI, and I'm not gonna I'm not gonna tell him what's going on. And we didn't end up doing it, but I still, one day, I think it'd be awesome to do that. But
Totally, that would be great.
Build this demo, put it out on Twitter, show that you can have a human-like conversation with GPT-3, and it just goes nowhere. Like, didn't go viral. Doesn't matter that I worked there in the early days. I don't know how to go viral. I don't know what the magic the magic touches, but so don't ask me advice. But a few months later, I ended up starting to talk to OpenAI because they were looking to build a voice interface to GPT-4. The GPT-4 model had come out, and it was better than GPT-3 and even more human-like in its responses. And so we started to work together to build this feature, voice mode, into ChatGPT. And so the way it would work in that first version of it that launched about a year ago is, there's a LiveKit SDK that's sitting on the user's phone, and OpenAI has a LiveKit SDK on the back end. So this is the part that I think was unique to LiveKit's infrastructure that nobody had at the time, which was that you could run WebRTC on a server. WebRTC, that protocol, was really designed for running on user devices. Like it was designed for a human to connect with another human. So it runs on a phone, it runs on a desktop, it runs on an Apple Vision Pro, it runs on all these devices, user devices. But WebRTC historically had never really run on a server, on a backend system. You couldn't write a program that ran WebRTC. And so we had this component of LiveKit in the infrastructure that allowed you to run WebRTC on a server. And so OpenAI effectively took that piece, right? Like, because what is GPT, the model? It's a back-end server program. So you need the model to be able to also kind of act like a user and be able to take in your voice when you're speaking and then generate a response that, that when it talks back to you. So the way it works is you have a LiveKit SDK on one side on the user's device. You have a LiveKit server SDK on the back end, that GPT is hooked up to. And so when the user speaks, their voice, their audio, what they're saying goes over LiveKit's network and arrives on the other end on the server, on GPT's side. And that voice gets converted into text. Because GPT only understood text at that time. So you have to convert that voice into text. The text then goes into GPT. It does inference. It starts to stream out these tokens of text. As those tokens of text are streaming out, we're converting that into speech, or OpenAI is converting it into speech. So it's going from text out of the LLM back into speech. And then that speech from the model is then routed back over LiveKit's network, where it travels down to the user's device. And then the LiveKit SDK on their user's device plays it out of their speaker. And you keep doing that back and forth, and you're having a conversation. What was really unique about what happened with GPT 4.0, so there was that demo that kind of broke the internet, where you saw this incredible latency and this apparent ability of GPT 4.0 to understand the nuance of what you were saying and to pick up on things like tonality and prosody and things like that, the cadence of your speech, accents as well. And so that model works a bit differently. That model actually is trained natively on audio, on voice data, and it shares an embedding space with all the text as well that GPT is trained on. And that has really interesting implications there, where that all of that demo was also using LiveKit. In this flow, it's a bit different. This flow is the same flow as advanced voice now that is in the app, if you try it, where the audio goes from LiveKit's SDK on your phone over LiveKit's network. But instead of converting it to text, there is no conversion anymore. The information, it's not flattened. You don't every time you convert from when audio is higher bandwidth than has more information than text. And so if I convert audio to text, I'm throwing away information. And I'm throwing away kind of the level of human expression and the tonality and things like that. And so the audio is fed directly into GPT 4.0, where it's natively trained on how to process that audio, just like the human brain is. And audio comes directly out of the model. So there is no text to speech as well on the other side. It's just audio streaming into the model, audio streams back out of the model over LiveKit's network to the phone where it plays out. So it's actually a simpler workflow, but better.
Right.
So that's kind of how it works. And yeah, that's where we fit in kind of this puzzle of advanced voice.
Yeah, that's very cool. So basically, you guys were part of this infrastructure that allowed OpenAI to build this sort of, it's almost like you're on an audio Zoom call with ChatGPT, right?
That's exactly right. It's what we like to say is that LiveKit's infrastructure gives AI the ability to see you, to hear you, and to speak to you. We effectively give it these kind of human-like senses that we're using right now. We give that to an AI model.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So, and then, like you said, like previously, you have to have this translation layer to translate back and forth to text when GPT was text only. But now they have the Omni model. It's even less. It really is a lot more like a Zoom call with GPT, where it's pulling in that voice and you guys are getting it there with super low latency. And this, one of the things that they demoed that was amazing is the ability to interrupt it. It's not like a walkie-talkie conversation anymore where you're like talking to GPT and you're like, over.
Totally. Yeah. It's not this kind of like turn-based system. It's continuous, where And what's interesting, and it's actually an active area of research, both on the LiveKit side, and other people are working on it too. But on the interruption side, like now, as you mentioned, it's like improved where it's not like a walkie-talkie. It's not this turn-based push to talk kind of interaction, but a more continuous thing where I can be talking and GPT can hear me and then also be generating a response. And as it's speaking, I can interrupt it and then it'll stop talking and start to, take in what I am saying now and incorporate that into the previous thing that I said. Um, and so the next step from there actually is sometimes like when humans interact with one another, sometimes like when I'm starting to interrupt, um, you might just keep talking. It might not actually be the right, you're kind of constantly speaking, but also internalizing what I'm saying in the context of what I'm saying. And there are moments where if I start to say something, you'll stop talking. But other times I might just start to say something and you'll keep talking and then I'll stop talking. And that's like another level of kind of the dynamic of how humans communicate with one another. And so the model GPT 4.0 and that interaction, we've gotten to like this level of where it will know that you're interrupting it and it will stop and incorporate what you're going to say. And then there's going to be another phase beyond that where it feels even more human, where based on the context of what you're saying, it might actually allow itself to be interrupted and listen, or it might just actually keep talking because what you were saying maybe doesn't make sense in the context that it should actually allow itself to get interrupted. So I think that it's going to get better and better and more realistic over time.
Yeah, because I think the conversationally good humans, let's categorize them out,
Yes.
are good at continuing when this is a really important point. You really do need to hear the rest of this point. But when they're like, I think you got my point, but I had some other stuff to say about it. And then you interrupt, they go, okay, now I'll stop because I
Yep.
want to hear what you say.
Yep. Another actual important part of this too is the kind of precision at which humans interrupt one another is it's not even just dependent on voice and what you're saying and context, but there's also nonverbal cues. So when you're on the phone, I think that when I'm on the phone, there are more accidental interruptions on the phone because I can't see the person. It doesn't happen that often, but it does happen more frequently than when I'm on a Zoom. And when you're on a Zoom, there tends to be a lot of like false interruptions more frequently than when you're in person with someone. It's just
Right.
that
There's different layers.
right, as you level up the fidelity of some of these nonverbal cues, the precision at which people are interrupted, stop talking at the right time, keep talking, and it's not a true interruption, that just gets better and better. And so I think another part of this whole equation into building kind of, I don't call it the personal computer, I call it the interpersonal computer. It's building a computer that can interact with you the way that we interact with each other. There's going to be another aspect to it, which is computer vision. I think we talk a lot about voice right now because the latency's gotten low enough to be realistic. The voices sound very realistic, but a computer that can see you as well is going to be even better of a conversationalist by using these nonverbal cues and incorporating that into its contextual understanding.
Yeah. And on the other side too, right? It could start to convey contextual clues visually to you as well.
Absolutely. Yes, totally.
Right. And you end up
Yep.
with both sides. Oh,
Yep.
that's fascinating. So does LiveKit, is it always human to computer?
No. So our infrastructure, it started off in a very different time in the world before kind of the AI boom and during the pandemic. And so originally it was really designed to be infrastructure to connect humans to humans. One human to one human to thousands of humans, 1,000 humans to 1,000 humans. It's kind of every shape of connecting people together over the internet. It was designed to handle all of those types of configurations. And then as AI, started to emerge, we had this piece of our system that we had added that allowed you to connect a human to a machine. In fact, there have been some demos where you'll sometimes see someone set up two ChatGPT apps, and you'll have the ChatGPTs talk to each other. That's kind of an example of connecting a machine to a machine, and there's going to be some elements of that too in the future. I think. I don't necessarily want to talk too much about agentic workflows. Everyone kind of cringes when they hear this word, but there will be a future where machines even communicate with machines as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And is yours just a one-to-one? Can I have multiple
No, yeah, you
parties
can have.
in the?
Yep, any shape. So you can have one-to-one human, one human to one machine, one human to 10 machines, 10 machines to 10 machines, 10 machines to 10 humans, 1,000 humans to one machine. Any shape.
So we could just start a podcast where I argue with ChatGPT and Claude and Grok and
Yeah, totally. And maybe that'll be like like a riff on this Notebook LM thing that has become really popular that
yeah,
Google
yeah,
put out. That's just
yeah,
like two machines having a podcast together. But yeah, we should bring some humans in the loop and mix up the dynamics a little bit. I think that'd be pretty fun.
yeah, yeah. That's awesome. You've mentioned before, like bringing eyes and ears, right?
Hmm.
Is that kind of how you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, so the way that I kind of think about this is OpenAI and other foundational model companies. The goal that they talk about is building AGI, um,
Mhm.
artificial general intelligence. In a
Let's just take
nutshell,
12 seconds. We can just define that simply, right?
I I think everyone has different definitions for sure. I can tell you what my definition is. It's
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's
yeah,
perfect, actually.
we're effectively building ourselves. We're building a synthetic computer. Humans are tool builders, and so what we're building is kind of the ultimate tool. We're building the tool builder, and so if we get to that point, I think a lot of people now believe that we will. I personally believe we will eventually. Not going to make any bets on time frame, but eventually, I think it will end up happening. And if we are going to do that, as a collective humanity, we're going to build a human-like computer. Um, how will you interact with a human-like computer? Are you going to use a keyboard and a mouse? I mean, the keyboard and the mouse were really designed. We have to. I don't know if you had to take like keyboarding in school, but I had to like learn how to type on this thing, right? And these inputs were designed as a way for us to give information to the computer. We have to adapt ourselves to give information to the computer by using this thing called a mouse and this arrangement of keys in a certain order, and learn how to press them quickly.
Are you a
But
Star Trek fan?
my dad is. I never have been. No.
One of the old movies, Scotty walks in and they somehow they go back in time, right? And he goes
Uh,
like this, computer, computer. And the guy's like, you have to type on the keyboard. And he's like, oh, how
oh, that's
quaint.
amazing. I gotta look that up. I have to look that up. That's amazing. 40 years ago, actually, near close to where I grew up in Cupertino, down in the. Okay, yeah, I gotta say that I did not have fighter jets on my bingo card for what might create a loud sound in the space that I'm in. Yeah. I'll wait for the. I can't hear. I can still just vaguely hear it. Okay, it's gone. Cool. So I grew up in Cupertino, and 40 years ago, down the road from me, is this community college called De Anza College. And in that theater, 40 years ago, Steve Jobs was on stage, and he had the Macintosh, and he unveiled the Macintosh, and the Macintosh printed across the screen and said out loud, "Hello, I am Macintosh." Right. And now 40 years later, we've been dreaming about this. I mean, in your example with Scotty and Star Trek, like we have been dreaming about computers that we can interact with in a very human-like way for a long time. But now the technology is finally here that makes that a reality. If you are going to build a human-like computer, the way you're going to interact with it is the way that humans interact with other human beings. And we use eyes, ears, and mouths primarily. The eyes of a computer are cameras. That's how a computer sees you. The ears of a computer are microphones. That's how a computer hears you. And the speaker, how a computer speaks back to you, the speaker is how a computer speaks back to you. And so to me, that is going to replace the primary way that you interact with computers in the future. It's a new paradigm where it's cameras and microphones and speakers, not keyboards and mice. Yes, you will still type. Yes, you will still use your thumbs. We use our thumbs with other humans all the time, many times a day. But even more than that, we use our voices and we use our eyes to navigate the world. And so it's going to be the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it makes it faster. No matter how fast you can type, if you're talking fast,
Yeah.
I think we can. Stenographers are pretty crazy, but I think we can always talk faster.
We can definitely talk faster. Yes. There are humans that can read faster than they can hear or listen.
Yeah.
But we definitely speak faster than we type, for sure.
Yeah. That's a good point. On the read side, it's faster to read than to hear. So yeah, this whole idea of multimodal and different ways, and I think, and then you've got stuff like Neuralink, and how will that play in?
Totally.
Can I get the read side just dropped straight into my brain?
Totally. It's just embedding to embedding. Like I'm going to take my embeddings and send them to you.
Yeah.
Directly.
Yeah.
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 I mean, yeah,
Exactly.
I think in the Neuralink world, yeah, maybe LiveKit may not exist or be relevant. But we'll have a good probably couple decades before I think that's everywhere. Definitely more than probably a couple decades before that's everywhere. So I'm not too worried.
Well, and what do you see as next? Like, let me ask you first for LiveKit. Like, you're doing awesome stuff. Where do you go from here? Where else do you go into? Or
Yeah, I
what's
think
the
that
future?
I think one thing we've realized powering some of these applications now that are at scale, and seeing uh, how they're used and some of the different use cases that are getting built even on top of um, like the GPTs and other models that are out there that leverage voice and computer vision. We're starting to see applications built in these different areas, like language learning is one example, and security cameras and customer support, like anything you use a telephone for. We're starting to see like people building AI types of use cases there. And one thing that's become very obvious to us just by having conversations with our users and customers that use LiveKit in their applications is that there is starting to with this movement, early kind of movement towards building software applications that use vision and voice as the IO for those applications, as the way to give the software application input and for the way the software application to generate output. We're starting to see new problems that need to be solved. It's a completely kind of different stack or a different set of concerns, really a different paradigm for how you build that software versus building a website. It's just very different, or building a mobile app. The stack underneath, the frameworks that you use, the flow of information, it's just different. And so what we see happening is that new tools and new pieces of infrastructure, not just on network. Today, we are predominantly a network infrastructure company, but even in the space of storage and in the space of compute, to give you an example, like in the compute space, like people have asked us about translation. I want to be able to do captioning. I want voice to be my primary interface. I want my voice to be my primary interface to my application, but I also want to be able to have the user be able to turn on captions or have them on by default. Do you provide transcription services? Or another one that I was just talking to a potential user with yesterday is, they have police people in the police force wearing body cams, and sometimes those police encounter someone out in the field that doesn't speak the same language, and so they want to be able to hold a button and do a live translation of what that user is saying in real time, and give that live translation to have the AI model take in what the user is saying in their native language, and then play it out over the body cam in a language that the officer understands. So doing a live translation between the two human beings assisted by AI. And these are compute types of use cases where you have a program running on a server that is taking in that audio data and then converting it, having a model do it. And so people have said, oh, like, LiveKit, do you have a service that I can leverage for this? Like one line of code, add that in. You're already powering our network infrastructure. Can you do that piece too? And so I think over time, what you'll see us expand into is kind of providing value all across the application stack, across storage, across compute, across network, that all the unifying thread between all three of those pillars is that they're all with an eye towards the new way to build applications for this kind of AI computing era, and to make it easy for developers to build those applications by leveraging our infrastructure. So that's kind of where you'll see us go.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think it's like we kind of started this with kind of the entrepreneurial journey. Don't be afraid to be amazing at one thing and then grow that into the other things, which is kind of what it sounds like you guys are doing. Amazing at this one thing, and you can grow it in the future.
Totally. Yeah. One thing I should underscore is that focus is really important. So, it's one of those things where be amazing at that one thing, that niche, that focus, that wedge, to kind of, gain some traction there. And then over time, you kind of like start to spread out that wedge, right? That wedge gets wider and wider, and you start to get into more and more things. But I would say that above all else, like, quality matters. So focus in the service of quality. You got to definitely, you can expand from a niche that you're in, but the timing of how you do that expansion, it really matters. You want to be able to build high quality things. That's ultimately what developers, and I think everyone cares about. Like, we want quality, good products, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that focus is so, it's hard to do, which is crazy because you want to do more things. You see, your eyeballs are always bigger than your stomach, right?
There's that Steve Jobs quote, right? It's focus is saying no to like the 100 other good ideas or something that you have. So I really believe that.
Yeah. I heard Mark Benioff recently was saying that Steve Jobs called him into his office one day, and he called him in just to say, we're moving from the iPhone to the iPad. We made the iPhone amazing, and we only have one A team in all of Apple. We're going to now move it to the iPad. And he had this little coffee table in his office. And he said, Apple will never build more products than fit on this coffee table.
Oh, wow.
Just in service of focus. Right.
It's amazing.
So we start a company and we think we're going to build way more things than Apple.
It's such a hard thing to do. You have to be super disciplined. So much respect for the way that Apple's been able to do that, and really just thinking in decades as well. Like the way that they plan, their roadmaps. It's pretty amazing.
Okay, thinking in decades with all this stuff that you're seeing, not necessarily LiveKit, but just the industry in general, what you see and what's around. If you had a magic wand and you get to fix whatever you want, it can be physics. I don't care. What do you fix? What's the one thing you wave the magic wand at to just solve the problem we're at today to push us into tomorrow faster?
I think what's so difficult about that question is that there's a lot of things that I would use this wand for. um, sometimes people, you mentioned kind of get to tomorrow faster. Sometimes people ask me about competition and how to think about competition. And I have a lot of thoughts about competition, but the one that I think is relevant to the question you asked is competition is actually a good thing. If you were trying to build something greater than yourself, that's good for humanity, leave something positive behind, or leave the world in a better place than you found it, hopefully, competition is a good thing, because when there is no competition, you end up with things like Internet Explorer. Right? Like the winner kind of the
Well
winner
said, Russ. Well said.
the winner ends up getting very comfortable, and then change
Uh-huh.
doesn't happen, and everybody kind of suffers as a result. So competition in the macro perspective of what is good for the world is an amazing thing. But I think that if I had this magic wand, I mean, there's a lot of things that I would use it for, but like one thing that comes to mind that I would use it for is to create healthier competition. I think if we're going to get there, if we're going to, the world is in like a really weird place right now. There's a lot of things going on outside of technology, right? That in some ways, I don't want to take like a doomsday approach, but sometimes you're like, wow, is there like going to be a tomorrow? With some of the things that are happening in the world right now, um, and I think that at times, especially with the kind of progress in AI and some of these frontier technologies, the competition gets a bit unhealthy, and we start to do things that I don't think we would be proud of looking back 100, 200 years from now, to one another. And so I think if I could wave that magic wand, get us to tomorrow faster, it would be to make the competition that we have with other nations, even within our own country, a bit healthier. Make the debate healthier, the exchange of ideas healthier. I think that'll lead to we'll still have like progress, but I think with a lot less trauma and a lot less pain inflicted towards one another. So
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I like that. It's definitely one of those things. I think I'm seeing these pockets start to rise up where people are having these awesome, deep conversations where they disagree vehemently and they're great friends at the end of it. Again, as we're talking about decades and looking forward, what do you see that future like? 10, 20, 50 years, 100, whatever you like. What do you see in that? What do you expect that we'll see? What do those things look like? What are we, I don't know, what are we better at? How are we using the things around us, whatever it is?
I think there are some things that will definitely be true. Like I think that there will be humanoid robots everywhere in 50 years. We're just on the kind of the starting. We're just starting off on that right now. It's still the early days for that, but I think in 50 years, there's going to be humanoid robots everywhere walking around, and you'll be interacting with those using cameras and microphones, audio and video, natural human I/O. But I think like more so what our relationship with technology will be, and how we'll use technology or leverage it. There's some things that I'm personally just really excited about that I think will have kind of profound effects on humanity. I can say one in particular. My partner is a special needs preschool teacher, and one of the things that I've learned about the education system is we all learn differently. We all kind of learning anything is this like n-dimensional space that you're kind of trying to navigate into and navigate through from one point to another. If like one point is starting out and the other point is like full understanding of something, you're trying to navigate through this high dimensional space, and your baggage and your self-confidence and all these things kind of come into it and kind of derail this somewhat in some ways or slow it down. And our brains are wired up differently. We're all dealing with different learning styles and in different environments, and the education system is a one size fits all system. And so, and that's not because of anyone's fault or that's their intent. It's just that it cannot scale. You can't get enough human teachers to interact with every student on an individual basis. And what that means is that if you don't kind of fit into this kind of narrow corridor, you're not going to have really the most optimal or efficient or personalized instruction that you could have. You're not going to learn as quickly as you might be able to, or as well as you might be able to. And that can have significant effects down the road in your life. And what I'm really interested in around kind of AI and where technology is going is it's going to help us scale up so many things that we wouldn't be able to do in the past, just because we are limited by human resources. Everybody now, I've been using ChatGPT on sometimes when I take long drives, I'll use it as a tutor and I'll ask it like about a frontier technology. I'll say, hey, I want to learn about quantum entanglement or CRISPR, or the transformer model, or things like that. And I can ask this AI any question I want. I can have it repeat something that I don't understand. And I don't have any fear of judgment or embarrassment. I know that it's just there to help me. And in a way where it's one, hard to have a human dedicated to you that has the time to do that, but two, I think we all fear kind of judgment from our peers. And so this is something that I think is going to really deeply affect education, but in other areas too. I mean, like mental health, there's a few companies that are using us for building an AI-based therapist. And as much as we want to say that like we don't feel embarrassed or sometimes reluctant to share things with a therapist, we all do. We all have these things internally that we might feel shameful about or might feel embarrassed about. And it's hard to kind of truly be vulnerable because we are afraid of judgment, by our peers. And so I think AI is going to also, give everybody, there's a negative take on this, right? You watch her and you see Samantha, and like there's definitely a negative dystopian take on it, but there is an actual positive take on it. And I think like even going within a vertical of mental health, even just like suicide prevention, there's another company that's building something with us for that. And just having an entity that you can talk to, you can confide in about anything, and it will not judge you, and it'll be there to hear you, to see you, in the metaphorical way of being seen. I think that's going to improve our humanity in a weird way, right? Like it's kind of ironic that interacting with a computer can make us more human, or can elevate our humanity. But I do think
But it's
that
a tool.
Yeah,
It's
I
a
do
tool
think
in that case, right?
it is a tool it is a tool for connecting with our humanity. And so that's a great point. And so I'm really excited about that over the next, couple of decades. I think that's going to be everywhere. I think that's how we're going to interact with computers.
Yeah. I love 600 things in that, Russ. So let me feed one into you, because I love to use it to teach me new things. Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
tell me about the fall of the Byzantine Empire. Go.
Yep.
But now I love that I can interrupt it now and like, no, tell me more about this part of it or whatever. But one of the things that you said there about learning, that I'll throw us back to the beginning of the show about teleportation. Ask it about what they're doing with quarks in the Canary Islands, if you haven't seen that research yet.
Oh, I haven't. Wow. Okay.
They're doing teleportation between like different islands in the Canary Islands. So
Oh no. Okay, so maybe teleportation will happen in my lifetime at some point.
let's see.
um,
So throw it in the teach me this ChatGPT
I
learning
will this
queue.
weekend.
But that's one of the things I love, that I think it's underutilized for, like you were saying, teaching. I love that you went there. Like a tutor, a custom tutor. One of the things I use it for all the time is like, hey, listen, and like you said, the embarrassment, right? Like, here's the math I finished. Here's the math where I have a hole. Here's this multivariable calculus equation. Explain it to me so I will understand it. Fill in the gaps I'm missing that I won't understand this. And it does a great job. But not only that, I can then interact with it and go, whoa, what was that part about the gradient? I didn't understand that. Fill that. And bloop, now you get that filled out, right?
Yep. Try it. It's amazing. Just, connected to that, like for academic papers, which are filled with these equations and things like that, that don't make any sense except for the people who wrote them. And maybe, a few experts, but yeah, being able to just like give it that information and have it take you through it at whatever pace you want. It's a revelation. It's amazing.
And one other thing you said about humanoid robotics, because this is one of my things. I follow the Colin Angle school of thought on humanoid robotics, is that like the Roomba is way better at getting under a couch than Rosie with a vacuum cleaner that fits a human hand. But Elon's made this argument that there are certain things that are built around the humans, and so trying to build a robot for that, it's too much disruption. Just build a humanoid robot but there's this interesting thing that we've been finding is a huge change in the way people respond to a robot when you put eyeballs on it. Doesn't matter whether it's humanoid or not, because we have an emotional and an intuitive response to it. So we've had some robots that we've helped, folks build where they couldn't tell which end was the front. And we're like, oh, stick some eyeballs on it. All of a sudden, everyone knows where the front is. So to your point, I really liked what you said about humanoid robotics there, because I'm going to put you right up with Elon now. Those are the best two arguments that I've heard for why we would have humanoid robots, because if I can interact with a way where it can understand my tone and respond with tone and then make facial expressions, that thing, I don't know, my dad had a thing where he would turn and just one eyebrow went up. You knew what that meant.
40, we talk a lot about voice and AI as an interface and stuff. And I think it's super exciting, but I think what people are underestimating right now is how much is going to change, to your point, when the computer can see you in real time. Human beings, about 30 to 40% of their brain is dedicated, the neurons are dedicated to processing visual information. There's a reason why they say humans are visual creatures. It's because a massive chunk of the human brain is dedicated to processing visual information. And so I think comparatively, like audio processing is like 3%. And so versus 30 to 40, right? So it's like 10 times more neurons. And so when you give that ability to a humanoid robot, when you give that ability to a computer, just imagine like the amount of context and information it's going to be able to pick up on, and how that's going to get weaved into its responses to you, and how you're going to interpret those responses, and how natural that's going to feel to interact with a computer that is embodied in that way.
Yeah.
It's going to be magical.
Yeah. And I think our first reaction can be to think about it like, cool, that's so neat. But if we go back to just an example, the tutor example, you might be able to make it where you respond as a learner better to it, right? My Spanish teacher figured out eventually that if I made a joke with it, I remembered it forever. And she adapted to that. So now, as many jokes as we can weave into our Spanish learning, so imagine your robot trainer learns your reactions and how you learn best and can give you the emotional support, all those kinds of things that you need. All of a sudden, you, the human, learn better. It's a better tool.
It gets imbued with the personality. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. This was fascinating stuff, Russ. I appreciated you diving into it with us. this was just so much to digest, and such an interesting set of things and cool trajectory on where I think the future could take us. It's just outstanding. So thanks for taking the time and having this discussion with us. I really appreciate it, man.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I really enjoyed the conversation as well.
So where can we find more about LiveKit, about you online, whatever? Give us the breakdown. How do we find you?
Yeah, for sure. So LiveKit to learn more about the company is a couple places. So the website livekit.io, on GitHub, github.com/LiveKit. That's where all of our open source repos are. And then for me, you can find me on Twitter. Or rather, I should say, you can find me on X. I'm still never going to get used to that, having worked there. But yeah, you can find me on X. My username is at DSA, D for David, S for sugar, A for apple. It helps to work there early and be able to pick your username before all the good ones are gone.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well played, sir. That's awesome. All right. So thanks again so much for joining. I really enjoyed the conversation. So
Me too, Brian.
let's
Thank you so much.
let's do it again in 7 minutes.
Okay, great. I'm ready.
Thanks so much. Hey, Harriet. I thought that was a great conversation with Russ. Over.
I think it was too. I love the fact that we're speaking this way though about this conversation. Over.
Yeah, it's so efficient when the only thing we have to communicate with is these walkie-talkies. Over.
I'm pretty sure we have a mic. I'm done with this. Over. Where I didn't make the sound. Okay, let me make the sound. Over. All right, got it. No, seriously, but can you tell me why we're doing this again?
So the way ChatGPT used to work was you could say something to it. It would basically take your voice as audio, send the whole recording, almost like if you've ever used WhatsApp and you hold down the record and send recorded messages. That's how ChatGPT worked. So it would send the whole recording. ChatGPT would get it, turn it into text, figure out what it was, come up with a reply, and then use text to speech, then send that back to you and then play it. So it was like using walkie-talkies to communicate with ChatGPT.
Like Siri? Like I think Siri does that too. It's very choppy.
Right. Yeah.
Very robotic.
Yeah.
Sound like I cuss at my Siri. No offense, Steve Jobs. I bet that's not what he wanted.
Yeah, no. It's in fact, one day I was so frustrated with Siri, I yelled, "Screw you, Siri!" And Siri said, "That's not how I talk to you, Brian."
It does correct you, so it has some intelligence. We got to give it credit.
That's the only thing it's good at.
But then what's different about the new ChatGPT?
So that's the cool thing is this is actually what the technology that Russ's company does, LiveKit. This is what's interesting about that technology is it gets rid of this walkie-talkie thing and makes it so that was good. That was good. Yeah. So it's a walkie-talkie now. Yeah.
The silence spoke first. So.
Yeah. I can hear the crickets. What were we saying?
Russ. ChatGPT's new advanced voice thing.
So LiveKit basically makes it so that instead of like a WhatsApp transfer where you're transferring this file and back and forth, it turned it into what we have now, which is more like a Zoom call with ChatGPT. And so now all of a sudden you can interrupt it.
Yeah.
You can. The thing that annoyed the crap out of me when I was using ChatGPT is I was like, "Can you give me a history of the Roman Empire based on the way I will now give you?" And I'm like, I wasn't done. I don't just need a random, like I wanted some specific thing, and it would just like give up on me.
Yeah.
So now it's a lot better at being interrupting, whatever.
Yeah, I actually have to say, Brian has his ChatGPT voice thing as this really, really nice female voice. I actually did one for mine and it was like this masculine. I don't know who this guy is, but I do not want that guy on my phone. I don't want him talking to me on ChatGPT. But the cool thing is you can change the voice.
I
So,
was going to say, you picked him.
you know,
I didn't pick him.
are we really gonna do the blame game now?
I'm just
Let's
saying.
just hear the female one. Like,
Okay.
I like it. So
Okay. Here's my ChatGPT. Let's do this.
what are you gonna ask her? Ooh.
Hey there, how's it going?
It's going great. We're on a podcast right now, and we're actually talking about LiveKit, the thing that enables you to do this back and forth conversation. Can you talk about it really quickly?
That's awesome. LiveKit is a powerful open source platform that enables real-time audio and video communications.
Interrupted.
It's often
It got interrupted.
LiveKit is an open source platform for real-time audio and video communication. It's like the backbone for apps that need live interaction,
No.
such as video call.
I want to learn about cows.
Got it.
Oh, I don't think it wants me to learn about cows. Wait, maybe I did the
Cow.
word. Oh.
Okay, I'll wait.
Oh.
LiveKit helps manage low latency connections, making it ideal for apps needing instant communication. It's a solid choice for developers looking to integrate live audio.
Okay, that's great. But could you explain to Harriet how she gets to choose the ChatGPT voice and it wasn't chosen for her?
Sure. Hey, Harriet. You actually have the power to choose the voice for ChatGPT.
Oh.
Depending on the platform you're using, there should be a settings.
Okay, but could you give her a little bit more information about how she maybe shouldn't complain about it since she chose it?
Absolutely. Harriet, it's understandable to have preferences for voice options, and it's great that you
Don't listen to Ryan.
choose. If you find that
He's
you're not
not-
entirely satisfied with the current voice,
Okay,
you can always.
don't listen to Ryan.
Thanks for listening, Harriet.
Oh. Okay. I think we
Okay.
played enough with this.
Yeah.
Because it started getting rude to me in a nice way.
It was very kind with its rudeness.
I didn't feel like that.
I asked it to interrupt you, but it did so very
I
pleasantly.
know, it's such a pretty cool system, honestly.
You can see how it has a little bit different icon there that's on the screen.
Yeah.
Also, that's different than the walkie-talkie versions
True.
before, which I think looked a little bit more like Knight Rider. Which is interesting because Knight Rider was Kit, Knight Industries, something 2000.
I'm thinking about something else when you
I
said
think the
that.
producers will put the real thing on the
Okay,
podcast.
hopefully.
But that was the name of the car was Kit, K-I-T-T.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the projects that they did at LiveKit was called Kit, where they started experimenting with this. And I'm not certain of it, but I think that might be the one that turned into the stuff that they're doing with ChatGPT now.
Yeah, he did various like I would say projects. And he didn't even say he said this wasn't like supposed to be a real product, right? Am I mistaken? I think he said that.
I think it wasn't necessarily what they set out to build with this.
Right.
And so, but it's interesting how they just found this was a really useful tool for people to use. Essentially, like he was just talking about, it was a kind of like the Zoom, the interactive chat using WebRTC,
Yeah.
so that a human could talk to a server backend, and then you populate that server backend with whatever you want. Whereas WebRTC is normally set up for peer-to-peer so that two humans are interacting, but now we give human to computer interaction, and it enables the stuff. That's why we're all excited about their work they're doing with OpenAI and ChatGPT. Certainly they're doing other stuff with LiveKit, but that's obviously interesting to so many people now using the LLMs.
I think I found it fascinating when I was like watching it because it reminded me about something that you are into right now. I mean, our company is diving into so many new things, and I think one of the things is Simage, right?
Yeah.
The newest product, it's all in, and when you're given your presentation on it, you bring up this concept of multimodal.
Yeah.
And his first presentation, I was like, "What is that?" that he talked about it. And then the second presentation, I was like, oh, I'm all ears because this is making
If you're all ears, then you're not multimodal.
this is going to be a long podcast, people. He does this like every day.
I'm just
Bad
saying.
jokes.
I'm just
And
saying
at
you're
least
talking
I'm
about
getting that
multimodal.
paycheck. That is one of the reasons. Can I tell a bad joke sometime?
Yeah, I'd love it.
Anyway, multimodal. Yeah, I think one of the best concept about multimodal um I remember from your presentation is that you're saying that how cool would it be if our the robots can use senses and communicate or do work the way humans do. And to me, I
Yeah.
was thinking like that's impossible. Everybody knows a robot can smell. They have sight through camera,
Yep.
and maybe I don't even know how sound works, but I think they do have sound, and then they have speech, but they don't. There's other senses that they might not have. So how is that possible, and what does it mean? Why do we need that?
So I'll explain multimodal, and then you'll explain to me how LiveKit relates to that.
Yeah.
All right, great. So multimodal is this idea that you're using more than one sense. Hence the reason I was saying if you're all ears, you're not multimodal because you're only using the auditory sense.
Okay.
So, but in the sense of pulling in the sense of pulling in sight, sound, smells,
Yeah.
perhaps. So when we talk about smells, we think about things like, oh, well, I can't go to the movie theater and smell. No, that's an output of smells.
Hmm.
You might smell the guy behind you,
Right.
but the input of smells, we do have that on robots today. So that would be things like Seaborn sensors, which is like
Mm.
chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, explosive. Like we can detect those things. That's essentially smell. Like we don't care if a robot can smell broccoli necessarily, but we
Right.
care if it can smell maybe explosives. So then this is the thing about multimodal is we as humans, if all of a sudden I take this spaceship and I throw it, you heard that hit the plant and you
Yeah.
saw me throw it. It's obvious to you those two were the same event. You heard the
Right.
pop of the thing hit the plant. You saw this ridiculous thing aimed at your head. But a robot that's processing just audio data or just visual data doesn't necessarily put those two things together. So
Right.
if we can train machine learning models where they're using what they smell,
Right.
using what they hear, what they see, maybe pulling in other senses, things outside of our visual sight range, infrared or LiDAR, all these different things, and we pull all of those in and train on all of those,
Hmm.
then all of a sudden robots' reactions can start to be more human. For
Hmm.
example, if you think you smell an explosive, but you see mom's souffle, you know that's not an explosive, and you
Hmm.
better shut up or mom's going to be mad,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
But if you see a box at the airport and you smell a bomb,
Hmm.
that's a problem.
Right.
So if the robot just smells a bomb and freaks out at mom's souffle, bad. But if it has multimodal input, it could also make the decision like, oh, this is a bad idea. Let's just tell mom it tastes great.
That's such a cool concept. Again, I'm from a non-technical background, so I'm always like, why do we care if a robot can smell, see, hear? Like, we don't care. It's a robot. It's supposed to be a robot. But I think that concept is so cool because to me, what LiveKit was doing or has done, we use ChatGPT a lot. And anyway, I can't afford therapy, so I use ChatGPT for therapy. Yeah,
Yeah,
people
that
try
makes
it.
sense.
Seriously, it's really good. But to have that voice system to be able to talk to you in that human way,
Right.
it's saving me $100 from. I'm saying therapy is free, you guys. Seriously, through ChatGPT. And now with the voice system, you can really talk to somebody in person about things that you might not, feel comfortable talking to. And it can give you that
Right.
feedback
Yeah.
from a system that's kind of it's pretty humanly and the voice is pretty relaxed and per the one you chose. Mine, we have to work it out. I think his name is Brad or I don't know. I don't know. I have to figure out what voice I chose. But I think that's what it was.
Yeah, and one of the things about this that I think is interesting is when we think about these things, our brains leave multimodal mode. In fact, we think about, well, I want to interact with ChatGPT. I want correct answers,
Right.
or I want whatever it is that we think about. But when you tie in emotions, all of a sudden the human psyche changes a lot with different inputs.
What do you mean?
So, for example, if you talk to a therapist and every response from your therapist was like this, like that wouldn't make a great therapy session.
Yeah.
But if all of a sudden, when you say something that's really hard that you're going through, and the computer can respond,
Right.
oh, wow. And there sounds like there's compassion in the voice,
Mhm.
your emotions respond to that differently,
Yeah.
right? You feel heard.
Mhm.
And so that aspect of not playing with your emotions, but helping you kind of grow
Mhm.
in a way that makes it easier for you to have those conversations or to talk to it or those kinds of things. Like
Yeah.
you open up new things. If you we have this issue with email, right? As you write a perfectly fine email to someone and they are furious because they think you were yelling at them
Right.
because they interpreted the tone of your email.
Mhm.
The same thing can be with these interactions as they start to become more human, the interactions.
Mhm.
If they're with a voice that's like it's over a walkie-talkie,
Right.
that's going to be harder for the humans
To
to
connect.
relate to the thing.
Mhm.
So here's one of the things that we found is if you and I've seen this from a lot of other major robotics companies, is if you put eyeballs on the robot, people relate to it differently.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
At my 98-year-old great grandmother, I bought her an iRobot vacuum and she named it John.
That is true. I've seen
Something like
those.
85% of Roomba owners name their Roomba. So there's that emotional connection to these things, even though that Roomba doesn't have any tone of voice or anything of
Right.
that sort, right? And so, but we still form some kind of an emotional reaction to these. And if we can make it a positive one, that becomes better for the user.
Yeah, and not like to cut you off. I'm trying to bring you back to this one thing, and I think this is one of my main point. You talk about how like the robot in the past used to sound well robotic. Like we have a robotic voice.
Yeah, that's
Everybody
yeah,
knows
right.
that.
Why we
Like,
call it that.
yeah. And now I think everybody is pretty used to that voice. That's what we think robots are. They're
Yeah,
pretty stoic.
yeah.
They don't really have any emotions. And so changing that, why is that so important to change that?
Yeah, I think it's what that opens up for us to be able to do. I think people relate to robots in certain ways. There are certain things they're willing to have them do.
Mhm.
There's certain places where maybe we're going to need to have robotics
Mhm.
that are harder to push into.
Yeah.
So people are kind of getting used to robots in the grocery store now.
Mm.
When I see robots on the
So
street, there's always a
true.
crowd of people freaking out around the robot.
Yeah.
Some mostly positively, mostly they're
Yeah.
excited to see it and interested, intrigued by it. But when you put robots in certain places, it starts to freak people out. It
Mm.
starts to scare them. But if the robot can say, "Oh, sorry about that, Harriet. Are you okay?"
You know, you just tapped an idea. I hate Stop and Shop's robotic self-checkout Oh, that thing drives me nuts, people.
Yeah,
Like, if you've been to
yeah.
Stop and Shop, seriously, I sometimes want to grab that thing and walk away with it and put it in the trash. But if it did have like a nicer voice where it wasn't annoyingly telling me to check out the thing that I already scanned.
Check out item 4. Check out new item. Item stolen. Item stolen. Item stolen.
I don't think it says you're stolen the item, but it
Oh, you
does
have a different
it
interaction with
does
those things
sound
than I have.
freaking annoying. But if it was kindly telling me in a nice voice, like, "Hey, did you check that out?
Yeah,
Hey, you still have something else to scan. You have one more item to scan." I might not want to slap it. I
yeah.
haven't slapped it. If Stop and Shop is watching, I don't
Yeah.
slap your
She
robots.
probably did.
No, I didn't.
Low key. She probably
Okay,
did.
I did. I did annoyingly leave some objects there because
Okay,
I
but
was so slow.
here's the other thing. Take it one step further. Let's take it far enough to creep people out, right? But if it says like, hey Harriet, I think that's going to be a great blouse on you. You should get another one.
That's scary.
But you might spend more money at the store,
True.
right?
Yes, that's true. If it actually even knew, like if it actually even said like, "Oh, that's a great um fruit you're buying. It's gonna give you this amount of
Don't
protein."
forget they're 2-for-1 sale today.
Yes. Oh my God, we're
Right.
giving Stop and Shop tips. We should get sponsored. Stop and Shop. No, no, Stop and Shop sponsor. Sponsor me. I don't think Brian
There you
cares.
go.
He wants to buy his fruit at whole price. I
Hey,
like money
there's going to be a
discounted.
whole subculture on this podcast about Harriet always trying to get paid.
Yes, I like money and free stuff. But no, that is such I really love that. And I think that's why I love being in the tech world. Things that seem like impossible all of a sudden seems possible. And I think that's so cool. I never thought about it like that. Like I literally just had this idea sitting here. Like my Stop and Shop is annoying. How can I make you're gonna have it in my face anyway. How can you make it less annoying, more welcoming? Give that thing a that was what was missing.
Yeah.
Lack of customer
Yeah.
service.
And I think the other cool thing in like this context of LiveKit that you kind of mentioned earlier is like Simage. When you mentioned that first, I was like, I don't know how those two things are related.
Yeah.
But so Simage is this technology that produces synthetic images that help train machine learning models, help make computer vision models better. And how does that make it more human?
Mm-hmm.
In the same way LiveKit, but when you think about it, LiveKit is this underlying network technology.
Mm.
It's not interrupting technology.
Yeah.
It's not make it human technology.
Mhm.
It is a straight technology. And I think this is one of the interesting things. This is one of the things I love about technology is that something like LiveKit that to your average consumer is a bland technology.
It
Like,
seems
oh,
like
it
it is
does
too.
it does WebRTC. Yay.
Yeah.
But what it enables, the humanity of what it enables,
Mhm.
and then on the Simage side, like, hey, create synthetic images. Like you mentioned, the multimodal stuff
Yeah.
all of a sudden may let your robot interact with you in a way that feels more human or is deeper
Yeah.
in the way it can connect with you and relate to you. And I thought that was a really nice connection. That's a really interesting point that you bring up about how these technologies that are otherwise mundane can suddenly be used to bring things into a world where it makes it better for us as the
Mhm.
human
Mhm.
to be part of that world,
Yeah.
which I think is really part of what we're ultimately driving for.
Yeah, I think Russ and his team are on something great here, and I would love to see more what they create with this stuff. And I'm excited to keep using ChatGPT
Yeah.
and to use the voice for this. So.
Yeah. Let's keep the learning going. This was a great chat and a great episode. Hopefully, people felt like they got to learn something this episode.
Mhm.
And
I know I did. Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. So thanks so much for joining me.
No problem. I love being here.
We'll catch you next time.
Mhm.